So here's a little video to answer some of your tarot questions. The first question I got was how to find the right deck. And as someone who has a lot of decks, I don't really know the answer to that. It depends on what you believe. So there's a tradition that says you need a deck gifted to you. So that's the one that you will read with. Someone else has to give you that deck as a present, which has not really worked for me very well because I have so many that very few people. One is my partner and then one amazing client, but for the rest, nobody has ever gifted me a tarot deck because they're afraid I already own it or I don't know what. So I don't really get gifted tarot decks. And you might find that same problem if you have more than just 2 or 3 decks. So it's something that most people I know who've received a tarot deck as a gift, it tends to be their first deck. And again, like, it depends on what you believe. Do you believe you need to receive a tarot deck as a gift? Does that make your heart feel joyful and happy and give you meaning? Well, then you better figure out how to have someone gift you a tarot deck. That's what I would say. Other than that, I think if you're not too into tradition and beliefs, since honestly, where do they really come from? Then you might consider the artwork. So is there a particular kind of artwork that you love, that you really connect with? So there's a Klimt tarot deck, there's manga tarot decks, there's all sorts of, there's collage tarot decks. In the Witch course, the Spoiler deck was mentioned, which is really cool. Not a traditional deck, since it's got a whole bunch of extra cards on astrology. You might also weigh the pros and cons of having an oracle deck versus a tarot deck. So an oracle deck will often much more reflect the artist and their world or their idea of what matters, what is important and what not. So in oracle decks there's total freedom in how you name the cards. You can have sweet little affirmations, you can have the spider or a whole bunch of animals going on, so it depends completely on the artist. Whereas a tarot deck will have, the major arcana, the bigger life things, stuff out of our control, or however you interpret those, and then the minor arcana and the court cards. And the idea behind tarot that I quite like is that it's supposed to encompass, a good tarot deck encompasses all of human experience. So it will give you a more well-rounded set of answers if that's what you work with. That being said, you may want cards that make you feel good, that are more like a hot water bottle on a cold day when you feel a little sick, and then a sweet oracle deck might be better. Or if you like a slap in the face kind of answer, then the Tarot de Marseille is quite brilliant, and reading only with the major arcana, I really enjoy that. I like decks that surprise me, that I can't put too much of my own story onto, because yeah, I like it a lot when a deck will give me answers or thoughts, because I'm kind of bouncing off the deck, right, when I read them, that I couldn't have come up with myself. So if you like history a lot, then Tarot de Marseille or Visconti's Sforza deck could be interesting. Those are some of the oldest decks around. Tarot de Marseille, it's important to know that it's a style of deck. It's not one particular deck. So Rider-Waite-Smith has kind of become a name for a style, along with it being a specific deck. In Marseille, a lot of cards got made at some point. So that's probably one of the reasons that word or that has become a particular style. So Marseille as a city to visit anyways, on the path of the history of the cards, is super interesting. And finally, if you'd like a small ritual to have you find the cards, I mean, that can also be really fun and give you a lot of meaning. It doesn't have to be fun. It can also just be deep and meaningful and profound, is to sit in meditation at home and cast out into the universe your desire for your one deck that you are going to read with for the rest of your life. You throw that desire out and you feel it trickle into manifest reality, into form. And then you start opening up. So when you go to the store, you can even feel with your hands, you can notice. You're going to want to look for that little glimpse, that spark of recognition that is that deck. This is a very, very simple ritual. If you want a more intricate ritual, we should talk outside of a video. So then I'm just going to check what other questions there were. So how to find your tarot deck. How to strengthen your daily interaction with tarot. So how to strengthen your daily interaction with tarot is, well, many people, they do a card of the day. It's a nice way to get to know the cards. I personally find it a little boring to do a card of the day because I don't really know. I mean, I can sit and but it always feels a bit vague for me. Like, why am I doing this? What does it give me? And that's just my mind. So it might offer you a beautiful point of meditation. And it doesn't really, I find it hard to get to know the cards if there's no question or nothing for them to relate to. So I might have a card at the beginning of the day and then look at that same card at the end of the day and try to make some connections as to how that card relates to my day. But what I find very fun and much more interesting in getting to know the cards is to play some divinatory games with them. So ask a question every day and pull 3 cards. And I like 3 cards because when you have 3 cards, you can make a sentence and you can really get to know how the cards function and change meaning according to their relationship to each other and the question. And a cool part of that practice is as well is you'll get to know the very human tendency. It's not for everyone, but it certainly happens to me and a few others that I know, or a lot, is to forget the question. So we'll pull 3 cards. We'll ask what interesting meetings will I have at lunch today? And then we'll pull 3 cards and then we'll think about what's going on in our relationship, because we see there's a man and a woman, and then we're like, oh, is this me and my boyfriend? And oh, this is the thing that happened last night, and and we've totally forgotten the question. And the cards have actually, you ask a whole different question. So that's what the cards are relating to, and not you and your relationship or you and whatever else is going on in your life. So the exercise is also very much in remembering the question, which is one of the keys to reading tarot. You want to know what you're asking. If you're reading for others, you want to remember what it is they asked and not start to make random connections based on the esoteric meanings of the cards that you may or may not know. So daily little readings and asking questions that are maybe not as heavy and as weighted and as oh, will I ever find love, and how will I find love, or why does love keep going wrong for me, or work, or whatever else, these deep, heavy questions. Of course you can start with that, but you want to get some confidence with what the cards mean, some playfulness, and just reading them quickly first. So asking questions that are a little lighter, a little more interesting, a little more creative. Not more interesting, the other stuff is super interesting, but more creative and playful for sure. So the interesting interactions at lunch, or what can I expect to rattle my mind or trigger me tomorrow. Then I have a fun little fortune telling game. And so the question, of course, presumes I will be triggered. So the trick is also to really look at the cards and maybe they're saying, oh, but you're not going to be triggered. So this playfulness, that's really fun. You can even think of what exercise should I be doing, or what movement. If you get the High Priestess with exercise and then the Fool, and then the Wheel, then you want to get up from your ass and start running on a treadmill at the gym. So this kind of approach will give you, much more of a sense of what's actually going on in the cards and how they might have completely different meanings or be saying completely different things depending on your question. Which then, when you get to the deeper, meaningful, full life questions, you'll have much more like ease at finding a quick answer that hopefully surprises you, challenges you, and gives you something more useful other than, deep, meaningful words that really at the end of the day don't change much. They might give you like, oh yeah, now I know this, or I feel this, or I've had this confirmed. But cards feel much more useful when they can be applied to actions you can take, things you can do. Because, unless, it's what you like, really, but that's just my preference. I really like it when the cards activate some part of my mind and I end up making a choice that turns out to be useful or taking an action that is actually useful. So, once I was feeling a little bit stuck with my work, and I asked the cards, like, how should I approach my clients? They weren't complaining, it was more how I was relating to the work as a whole, of seeing people at my office and helping them, and it felt like a little in my being. So I put out 3 cards, and I think it was maybe King and Star or something, and then maybe it was the Lovers, I don't know, it was with the Tarot de Marseille, but I sat with it for a few days, because again, the tendency is to find meaning in them. So King, like royalty, or the Emperor, it was the Emperor. So finding some royalty and confidence, that would be the meaning of the card, right? Or the Star is like, follow your North Star. And then the Lovers, in the case of the Tarot de Marseille, is kind of like a confusing card. And that path, it's like, yeah, then I have all this meaning, but then what do I do with it? So I try to get away with it and see what's actually happening. So there's a king or an emperor, and he is fully dressed in all this fancy clothing. And I would do that. I would like get dressed. I might put on some makeup that you don't even see I'm wearing, and I'd like think of what do I wear and what am I representing? So I'd put on all this regalia, basically. And so I see this king dressed, or emperor dressed, and then it's naked. He's naked, and a she. But so the clothing goes off. All those like constructs of how to present yourself, how to sell this, be this thing, is all gone, and you have someone who really doesn't care about social constructs because she's naked beneath the stars, pouring out things into the water and the earth. And then finally, on the last card, what's happening is people are touching each other. And the sentence that I finally got to was, drop the regalia and just touch people. So that's what I started doing. I started to going to work to see my clients in a much more chilled way, not doing this whole big thing every morning, and just focused on being there for them and not touching them physically, but touching them with this work, with this partnership that we go into when I'm doing coaching, or the facilitating magic relationship when I do the apprenticeship, and just touching these people, and that in return touches me, and it's been super useful. That's to me like when reading cards becomes really excellent, really useful, and a lot more meaningful. So that's that. So we've had how to find your tarot deck, how to strengthen your daily interaction with tarot, and so I also like to read with several tarot decks, and that's really fun. So I'll do this in a bigger ritual, either when I have someone who's booked a tarot reading with me, or I'm having one of my moments where I'm going to do some big tarot exploration at home with myself or at my office on a full moon or who knows. So then I will think into one of those bigger questions that I don't actually have an answer to. And generally, so if I'm reading for someone else, I will first do some work around having them enter a meditative state, and of course I'll join my client. Or if I'm doing it on my own, I'll enter this meditative state on my own. So through the grounding and centering that I teach a lot, or even as much as orienting to sacred space with a circle, building an altar, having several decks out. So I'll choose a few decks intuitively, but usually there's also a Tarot de Marseille and a Rider-Waite-Smith deck lying around, just because they're like I don't know, the muesli of breakfast, and all the other cards are the chia seeds and the different sprinkles of fruit and the maple syrup. So I like to have the muesli or the yogurt. I don't know. I don't know how you eat breakfast. That's my current breakfast thing. And then I'll just start like feeling into the questions. So it's much more of a meditative trance-like thing that I'm doing. I might have one overarching question that feels a little more weighted or big, which is also where the meditative state comes in. So I can really remove myself from desiring any particular outcome, and also remove myself from how I see myself. So in the Seven Gates ritual, we do some of that, or the Seven Gates journey within. We kind of remove ourselves from ourselves to get a clearer picture. And if you're reading for yourself, you want to be in that state. If you're reading for someone else, you also don't want to have preconceived notions of who or what that other person is, and especially not what you think they want to hear. And even more importantly, like ignoring what you feel they might not want to hear. So that's often the most valuable thing to say, is what you believe they don't want to hear. So don't hold back. And then I might do 3 cards from one deck, and then do 3 cards from another deck, and then 3 cards from another deck. And what often happens is 2 or 3 of the cards from the different decks will be exactly the same card. And that's when I know there's something interesting to pay attention to. So it's very experimental, and perhaps I should do a full video on that alone. But the way I started with it, so to give you a beginning of it, and if you want more detail of it, let me know. But the beginning, the start of it is just literally to play around, and I will like spread them out. So I'll unwrap all the decks and I'll spread them out so I can like feel and find cards in a very explorative, playful way, very intuitive way as well. And that's when the weird stuff starts to happen. And I have no idea why it's then that there will be more of the same card or more of the strange connections. But I'm sure science will catch up on that someday. Who knows? Maybe not. But it just gets more interesting. Maybe it's also being in a trance-like state gives things more experienced meaning. So that's how to read with several decks. Go for it and make a massive mess. And I recommend having a picnic blanket on the floor, because you'll have way more space. Tables can be very limiting and only give space for maybe 2 or 3 decks if you spread them out. And I'll have them, you could even put one deck in a circle on the outside, and then make a second circle with another deck and start choosing cards from those circles. So that's also really fun. You can have the 3 card spread, or even have 2 or 3 decks out, and then if you're into the Celtic cross, you might pick cards from any of the 3 decks to make the Celtic cross, and you'll see like, oh, maybe there's two emperors and 2 stars. So that can get very interesting and exciting. And yeah, so tarot card, then the next question, so we're moving on, is tarot spreads and how to better understand them. Particularly the one question was at the bottom card of the Celtic Cross Tower. So on the right, there's this tower of 4 cards. So the bottom card signifies your influence, what you can do or what you can affect. And you might notice how some cards will say you can't really affect the situation, or if you have the 10 of Wands, you need to carry your own weight, or the 4 of Cups, that might mean like it'll be handed to you, you don't have to do anything, or the thing you should be doing you're gonna ignore. So it's very much your influence, like what is the thing you can do. So with that position, you'd want to look for an action or a non-action in those cards, or even a meditation or a pondering. You want to see what's going on and forget the meaning. Like if the High Priestess is all this you might say, forget the High Priestess, I'll cast a spell for it. That would give it some action. So the question or the position determines what the card means. Or what the card is relating to. So how do I influence it? To me, influence is very much an action or a movement of some kind. And as for, then there was another question, and this will be the last for this video, is the relationship between cards and understanding them better and how to practice it. So how can I understand the relationship between cards better and practice this? And the best way to do it, actually, in a really fun way, so again, to remove some of that, like, I can only draw cards when, is, and I got this from Camelia Elias, who's amazing. So if you want to get into some pretty fun, really challenging, also really amazing tarot from a very, very smart and intelligent woman, then check out Camelia Elias. But she said, I believe she said, paraphrasing, is to take all the major arcana cards and just put them in a row, or put them like above each other in 2 or 3 rows, and then start making sentences out of what you see. And you can do the same thing with the minor arcana if they all have images. So, but actually, even with the Tarot de Marseille, using the minor arcanas with all the symbols, it'll force you to really dig into, like, what do you see? Is there tension now? Is it a release? Like, what do the cups mean? What do the pentacles or the coins mean? And so forth, or mean, yeah. What do they, show? And so let's go with the major arcana. If you put out a row, with all the majors, and you just start telling a story, you could play with having the one main character, be the one that the story is about. So if it starts with the wheel, you might say, in a whirlwind, our hero, the fool, got completely lost and lost his pants as well. And then we have the High Priest. So he sat down and took a moment to read a book and gather his thoughts. So this is not great at all, but it'll give you some, like, you want to play. You really want to play and start being able to make stories quickly based on what you see in front of you. So as you get to know the relationships between the cards, in order to do so, this is a great way to do it. You can also, like I said, in the getting to know the cards better, or how to strengthen your daily interaction with tarot. So when you ask a question, you pull 3 cards, see how quickly you can form one concise sentence out of the 3 cards that will answer your question. So it can answer your question poetically, slightly abstractly, but it can also be very down to earth and practical. But just focus on coming up with a question that includes all 3 cards as quickly as possible. So that will give you a ton of practice in getting to know the relationships between cards in different situations. And remember also, and and again, so I should also quote Camellia Alias on that one. So coming up with really quick answers, that's this I got from her too. Yeah, so that's been super useful to me. And sometimes it might take a day or two. I mean, so yeah, so I hope that's a useful introduction to how you may work with tarot cards. This is nothing more than an introduction, and have a fabulous morning, day, evening, night, spring, summer, winter, no, summer, fall, winter, wherever you are. Yeah.